.NET Foundation virtual meetup. So that seems to have helped us draw a good crowd, and hopefully I'll remember to do that again next month. But other than that, nothing to say. We'll just let James go and wow us.
Great.
No
Can you see
pressure.
my screen? Is it happening?
Yeah.
Is there a chat room? I can't see anything. How do I use this application? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wait, manage. Wait, is there a chat room?
There is.
Oh, there's a big button that says chat room. Look at that. Oh my goodness. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, all I see is your face. So, which is funny. So, okay, cool. Well, all right. I think, and you should see the .NET Foundation website right now. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, good. All right. I'll also monitor this when I try to use a technology that's not from Microsoft. There we go. Yeah. First, like honestly, I'm really excited to come all the way down to Houston virtually to give a talk. It's been a while since I've been down there. What's really exciting about I guess it's sad that everyone's stuck inside, but exciting is that I get to actually speak to more people without having to travel. So I can be at home and actually meet and interact with so many more people than usual, which is great. And funnily enough, this all happened because we were on an MVP thread. I don't know if Jason already said this, and someone was looking for someone to talk at their user group, and I was like, man, no one ever asked me. And then I got a whole bunch of emails that everyone asked me. I was like, I haven't talked in a while, but you can always just email me. So they did. We have a whole bunch of exciting things going on. And before I go into the talk, I will talk about the .NET Foundation a little bit, because what's really cool about this is that, this is sort of the independent nonprofit organization behind .NET. And there's tons of projects that help boost and help .NET projects. You can become a member. It's free. I'm a member, which is cool. There's a board of directors as well. So you can actually go into the board of directors, which are all voted in by .NET Foundation members. The elections just happened, which is really cool. One of the initiatives that myself and my colleague John Galloway worked on was retooling and rebooting the .NET meetup, specifically this virtual user group idea. So the cool thing about the .NET Foundation is that there's a working group. So if you have an idea that says, I think that this could make .NET or the .NET Foundation or the .NET community better, you can put in a proposal and you could do it. It's a thing that could happen, and that's what happened. So when you go to the .NET Foundation page, you'll find the meetups page. This is redone. This is me. I made this page. Look at this page. It's beautiful. We have these swim lanes if you want to start one, resources, which is cool. So you can find a bunch of presentations and workshops. There's this thing called the .NET Virtual User Group. And when you tap on that, it goes to another beautiful page that I created. Look at that. It's beautiful. And there's me. This is literally the session happening right now. So what's nice about this is I started joining all of these different meetups to say, I want to attend all these really cool virtual sessions that are going on. Then I looked at my meetup account. I was getting notifications from everything. I was like, this is too much, right? So the idea was that at least for now, when things are virtual, let's make a single easy place where everybody can go in a simple meetup that you can join to find all of the virtual .NET user groups that are taking place. So when you hit this join now, it actually goes to just meetup.com. There's about 674 members. It's been just started about a month ago. And there's been 20, 30, 40 events, and you get notified, when things are happening. And what's nice about this is that now you're sort of tapping into the global community of .NET. And it's really awesome. A lot of user groups use different technologies, whether it's Teams or Zoom. Some go to Twitch. Other user groups have the .NET Foundation stream to YouTube for them. It's really neat. So anyways, I'll put a link over in here in the chat, so you can give that a check and check it out. And any user group organizer, maybe you're part of other user groups that you're like, man, I would like to see them on here. Tell them to submit. There's literally a form, a little bit.ly link, and they just fill this out. It's super simple, super duper simple. Cool. And that's awesome stuff going on there. All right, let's get into it. Let's pop that open. All right. You can see my PowerPoint now? Yeah, I can see a preview. Oh, that's there's a nice little preview button. See what you're doing there, Zoom. I like it. Well, I'm super excited because it's an exciting time for .NET developers. Obviously, this week was Ignite, which has a lot of IT-focused announcements on Azure and Power Apps. there's some stuff around .NET 5 with the latest RC that just released. We'll talk about some of the things that we just shipped today, which is very exciting. I didn't know we were shipping them today, but then we did, which was nice. And some new versions of Visual Studio that have some really great features packed in for developers. So I'm James Montemagno. Andrew or Jason may have, Aubrey may have introduced me a little bit, but I am a lead program manager for the .NET community. So I have a team that's focused on building and nurturing the .NET community in all aspects. And my love and my passion is around mobile development with Xamarin. I worked at Xamarin before joining Microsoft. I was a Xamarin developer before that. It's been almost 9 years, I think, as a Xamarin developer, and I'm still building and shipping apps today, which is oh so exciting. So today I'm going to talk about what's new, what's next, what's upcoming for Xamarin developers. Or if you're not a Xamarin developer, you're just interested, if you're a C# .NET developer, you're going to see some really cool stuff that we're doing. But also, if you're not a .NET developer yet, maybe there's some really cool things and you'll want to become a C# dev. So, the mission of Xamarin and .NET as a whole is to really bring C# and F# and VB and all the different languages to every single operating system. The Xamarin mission as a platform has been to delight developers and to enable any developer to build beautiful native cross-platform apps on iOS, Android, and any other .NET operating system, wherever .NET runs. So it's Windows, Mac, Watch, TV. If it's a device, basically it can run .NET. And we want to be able to not only build these applications, but also share code. So we always think about maybe sharing code with .NET Standard or class libraries. And what Xamarin does is adds on top of sharing code with two very important building blocks. First is Xamarin Forms, which is our cross-platform UI, and then Xamarin Essentials, which is our cross-platform API that enables you to access native features of iOS, Android, Mac, tvOS, basically all the things that you want to do. So connectivity, file pickers, taking photos, things like that. And of course, up top, you always have access to the native APIs. And this is what we think is the ultimate developer platform for building client applications across mobile and desktop. Because not only do you get all of this stuff, but you, of course, get all of the rich ecosystem in and around .NET. So all of the amazing libraries that have been built for decades that are tried and tested, and of course, the world's best developer tools with Visual Studio and Visual Studio for Mac. And what's amazing about that is that community aspect. Like I said, .NET has been around for a long time, and C# has been, but there's been an amazing community that has not only embraced mobile development and, of course, desktop development, but also developers and companies that have built their businesses on top of it. Whether it's vendor products, component vendors such as Syncfusion or Infragistics, or amazing architecture libraries like Prism or MVVM, or cross-platform drawing libraries like Skia or Lottie, or databases like SQLite or Cosmos DB. Or you can tap into this amazing ecosystem where there's hundreds of thousands of packages that you can consume in your apps. And the team is really focused in on not only ensuring that this community is rich, but also that it's easy to get started. And that's the one thing I'll focus on really quick. Is over the years, as mobile development and desktop development has evolved, things have grown. There's more operating systems, more versions of them. So naturally, it took longer and there was more SDKs to install and more tooling. Well, one thing that the team really did was dial in the installation size and time. And between Visual Studio 2017 and 2019, they actually shrunk the installation times by under 1/3. And additionally, they made it 2 times faster to install by removing a bunch of additional dependencies that can be delayed installed till later, and slimming down to what you actually possibly need. And additionally, on top of that, not only is it important to get started fast, but really important to be productive. And that's one of the biggest themes that the development team and PM team have really focused on. So joining Microsoft, what's been great is that there's a lot of partnerships. So as you see, a lot of things I'll show you today is because we're partnering with these world-class engineers and PMs that have built amazing tooling. So we're working with them and integrating them across all of our different products. So for example, just think about coding faster and deeper into our code, things like rich IntelliSense engines built on top of Roslyn and amazing analyzers and adornments that all come whether you're building your UIs in C# or XAML or Android XML. You can multi-target your libraries, so you can seamlessly deploy a library to 10 different operating systems from a single library. And then also SourceLink, which is an amazing technology for library creators that enables developers to debug into the open source code from a NuGet package, which is really, really neat. Of course, coding is good, but we want to build and deploy faster. The development team and the engineering team is literally going down to the milliseconds, scraping off as many little things that they possibly can to help make sure that builds are faster and you're more productive than ever. So since the early releases of Visual Studio 2019 up until now, they've actually knocked down from first over 20% incremental, nearly 30%, and deployment over 50%. And especially in Android, we've integrated into the latest Android developer tool chains with AAPT2 and incremental APK builds too that make sort of that, I make a change in the Android project, it goes really fast. Now, once you've sort of built and you've been deploying and you're getting ready to release, I think what's also important is that your app starts really fast and also that your app size is small. On iOS, we're sort of really lucky that applications are ahead of time compiled across the LLVM, so they're sort of really just super optimized. On Android, traditionally we've used a just-in-time compilation to do that. But the team has worked to sort of bridge the best worlds of ahead-of-time compilation with JIT with something that we call startup tracing. And startup tracing on Android is a checkbox, which is really nice. And that checkbox uses a custom profile that says, here are the things in the startup of my application code that's oh so important that needs to be ahead of time compiled. You can use the default implementation of that, or you can actually run a command line and run your application, and it will generate a special profile for your application. And that can actually save more than 60% of the startup time. I've seen apps go down to under 1 second in boot time, which may have been 5 or 6 seconds with some of the defaults that used to be used. And finally, we've integrated into the Android app bundle system. That's a new way of compiling your Android application. It no longer produces an APK, but it produces an app bundle. And that sort of enables Google to compress and optimize the delivery of your application. I turned this on in my latest application and reduced the app size from 25 megs down to 12. So over 50% improvement. And again, that's just a checkbox to do that when you deploy it to Google Play. And of course, as you're iterating on your app, releasing, making changes, tweaking UI, we want to ensure that the entire process is seamless. So that's why we built in hot reload technologies from the very start with XAML hot reload, and also ways of deploying to iOS extremely fast from Windows, and even recompiling Android resources in seconds. So what I want to do is not only just talk about the features, but kind of show you this new Xamarin experience. I branded it new because I feel like Apple, they come out with an iPad, and like, this is the new iPad. So this is the new Xamarin experience. It's the Xamarin experience you know and love, but better, because we've been doing all of this amazing work. So let me go ahead and just boot up Visual Studio. Now, I'm using the latest Visual Studio preview that just came out yesterday. And I've turned on some of the preview features that are on this. And in fact, I think almost all of them except for one feature is available in stable that I want to show you. But what we're going to do is just go in and simply create a new project, because everyone loves a file new project. Here we go. And over here, I'm just going to select a mobile app. Of course, I could go to mobile, and we would see that here's our, our Xamarin Forms application. And I've used it a lot recently, so it's over here in my recent project templates, which is nice. So I'm just going to go ahead and tap on that. And I'm going to call this App 18. That sounds great. It's a good name. And the first thing that we'll notice is that we actually have a brand new getting started experience. Here, the team has optimized sort of this, what does your application look like? What does a flyout mean? What does tabbed mean in general, right? So we get these nice animations. Here we can see that this supports iOS and Android. This uses the new Xamarin Forms shell, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But I'm going to start with a blank app and add on a UWP app. So I'm just going to create a new project here. And of course, you can feel free to leave any comments and questions, and I'm reading them. They're right off to the side here. Dual monitor setup. So it's going to just create a new project over here. My machine, of course, may be a tiny bit slower just because I'm doing everything in the browser because I refuse to install Zoom. So there's that. So this is going to look no different than anything else over here. Basically, I get a .NET Standard Library, Android, iOS, and a Windows project here. And James asked about, it would be nice to use Shell. And in fact, Shell for UWP, it's stable for iOS and Android, and there's a preview available for UWP. I don't know exactly when it'll be stable, but we'll sort of talk about some of the investments here in the future. Okay, cool. So here is what I have done. I have a file new project. I have a main page. We've actually updated this over here, which is cool. I'm going to use this tool, Zoom It, over here, Brandon. This is in sysinternal, and I'm just going to mark here. We have some colors. We have these color adornments. That's really nice over here. Showing some of the new features, such as some spans that you can do on here for formatted text. And what I'm just going to do is just hit debug. So this is going to compile my UWP application. This is beautiful because I don't need any devices. I don't need any other SDKs. I'm just, building a Windows application at the end of the day, which is there. So let's go ahead and see this deploy start. Perfect. Cool. All right. So this is the kind of the new sort of, oh, dang it. There's one change. I installed some new templates, and then there we go. Oh my goodness. No. I swear I just installed new templates, and then I tested this earlier and it worked. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's correct. Please hold. This would be. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. Perfect. Again, this is the one feature that's in preview, so perfect. All right, so here's my application. It's running, which is great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to snap it over here, which is cool. And I'm just going to snap it over. This is kind of a cool little way to work here. And the first thing that I want to show you is that there's a bunch of things that have lit up over here. So my main page over here is in my shared code. But over on the left-hand side, we have our live visual tree. So this is showing me all of the different elements in my XAML page. So I can sort of click on these, and it'll take me exactly where I need to go into the code, which is nice. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this down. Now I'm over in UWP, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start making changes to the code. Immediately, it will update in UWP because we've enabled hot reload for Xamarin Forms directly in to the file new experience, which is awesome. This is in the preview preview Visual Studio right now. And additionally, with this comes sort of iterative hot reloading. So if you notice up here, I just started editing and I did not at all save the file, which is cool. I can just simply one at a time. And to really make that point of why that's important, because let's say you have some data binding, and let's say you have an entry or entry here where the user has entered something. So over here I could say, hello everyone in Houston, right? What's cool now is that if I come over here and I fix this, and I say Xamarin, notice that over here now that it stayed the same. It didn't refresh the page. This is brand new sort of iterative launching of hot reload in here. So it's a brand new feature, which is cool. UWP and this iterative, which is cool. I think the visual tree is going to be on Visual Studio for Mac as well. I'm pretty sure. The document outline's there, and I think they're just going to tie in these other parts here, which is cool. All right. So this is really nice, but now let's say I want to make some changes to the data binding here. So let's say instead of hard coding this, I want to maybe bind it to a string. So I'm going to come in the code behind. I'm just going to say public string hello, and we'll say get set. Over here, I'm going to say hello. I just type in hello here. Perfect. And then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say binding context equal to this. And this is a demo, so however you may do this, this is good. Now, I want you to also notice that there's squiggles here, and it says, hey, you made some code changes to the C#. You got to restart your application for this to work. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to hit this restart button. What that'll do is reboot the application here in debug mode with our new changes. And of course, you know, as you're hitting the restart button, it just does a diff compilation. Perfect. I'm getting this bug, so I'll have to report that to the team, but let's go ahead and we'll try it again until it works. Perfect. Come on. Third time's a charm. Come on. This is important. There we go. Perfect. All right. So now we have our application up, and now let's go ahead and add a property on here and say text equals binding to hello on here. And let's go ahead and see if this is going to work for me. Come on. I'm blaming Zoom. There we go. Perfect. All right, cool. Awesome. So I've hit my binding, but I know that I've had a typo because, as we can see here, there's a typo. But sometimes you don't see that. So that's why the brand new binding analyzer is showing me right here that I have a binding error in this, which is cool. And if I tap on that, it's going to go ahead and open this inside of Visual Studio. And we can see that it's telling me that Xamarin Forms entry text does not have a hello with one L. If I go over here and type in hello, I see the binding pop up, and I can also clear this out. And now my binding error goes away, which is really cool. So not only am I hot reloading, I'm getting these XAML binding failures to any of my logic, no matter what frameworks I'm using, all built right into here. I also get the live visual tree, everything that I would know and love and expect, which is really cool. So now I'm all happy because I'm testing it on UWP. It's all good. Let's go ahead and boot this puppy up over on Android. So I'm going to literally make no changes to my application at all. I'm just going to come up, I'm going to hit debug. This is going to start an Android emulator, which pops up right there. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller, I guess. I don't need that to be huge. And now what it's going to do is just do an Android compilation. So this is, again, is no real difference than what has maybe happened in the past in the world of Android, but it's going to detect my install changes and things like that. And this should be one of the newer Android emulators, I think, but it's there. So let's see. It should come up. It's going to do a bunch of checking to make sure that I have the right files installed and then deploy. So kind of the normal Android-y things, right? Perfect. Now in debug, we're still seeing this splash screen. We're initializing hot reload over here, and it takes a few seconds. And that's because the application is not, deployed. It's not in startup tracing mode. It's not in pre-compilation. It's injecting and starting up the actual debugger in there. So it takes a little bit longer. Now here's what's cool about this is, let's say I actually do typo that over here. I can still come over to my XAML failures right here. And look, and that works for Android too, right? There's my page, hello, my text, it's right there. If I go ahead and clear that out and I fix it up here, we're gonna see that it's good and my bindings are back. Easy peasy, right? Which is really, really nice. I get the same experience, so I can say pink over here. I get the same exact iterative stuff, right? So I can just type it in. It's gonna go ahead and do those diffing that's coming across automatically. Welcome to Xamarin Forms. Super duper nice. I can come in and change, let's say, some of this label and just add more labels in there. Just add a bunch of labels, which is cool. I also get the same exact live visual tree over here, so I can pop around. I can go into the frame and see there's the hello, welcome to Xamarin Forms, which is nice. Now, at the same time, while this is cool that I'm sort of doing that same type of development, there are some times in Android that you need to actually get into the resources. So that's one of the important parts of having this sort of Android project here, is that you get all these resources that you need to mess around with. So one of the things that I always like to do with all of my applications is adjust the style. One of the new features of Xamarin Forms is that it actually includes everything in it automatically for you, and you can override it. So one thing is it has this default blue up top, and it also has this accent color of pink because it's the native controls. So what I can do is I can come in here and I'm going to just come in and see color accent. And then what's nice is we also get the color adornments right here. I'm also going to override, let's say, color primary. And let's really make it just pop. Let's just make it black. So it'd be really clear that when I highlight over this, it should be black. Now at this point, right, I'm inside the Android application. This is an Android resource that has to get compiled into the application. So you normally have to stop. You'd have to do a full compilation and then redeploy into debug. But just like we have XAML hot reload, we also have a feature that has this very cool little refresh button over here. And specifically, it's called Apply Android Changes. And this takes any of the resource changes, including drawables or anything like that, and it automatically does a diff on your APK and re-injects it into the application. So here, this is actually going to just start that up. And I don't have to, I could still be using my application. But over here, it's going to simply sort of look for the differences in my code and then redeploy. So let's see if this is going to work for us here. It should, because, there we go, perfect. And, oh, color primary. Yes, color primary. Well, color primary dark is what I wanted, so that's good. But notice here that we see that it's actually black now, which is cool. But let's actually fix that other thing, which is the color primary dark. Let's just make everything black color here, and then just hit the restart again. And again, this is going to look for differences in my APK and then redeploy it. And surprisingly, this is actually a tiny bit slower with the screen mirroring going on. I did this earlier, and it was half that speed, I would say. But you can see it's really fast, right? Now we have this black bar up top to match our black themes, which is really cool. So we get that nice experience, but also the experiences of iterative development come to the native platform too. So regardless if I'm working in the cross-platform user interface or in my cross-platform code or in the native code, I get that same exact experience there, which I think is delightful. So that's Android. Now, the final piece is to deploy it to my iOS device that I have sitting right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set iOS as my startup. So let me go ahead and unlock my device here. This is my old test device. And I'm going to go ahead and note that I'm going to go back to our main page here, that I just have an iOS app. I have all my resources, Xamarin Forms, Xamarin Essentials. And what we have is the ability to deploy to an iOS simulator. And here specifically, I would connect to my Mac on the network, and then I would make sure everything's installed properly, and it would be a great day. But we have a new technology called Hot Restart. And specifically for iOS is where it works. And what that enables me to do is rapidly iterate on my iOS application when I'm making code changes that need to be redeployed. Very similar to that Android resource, but it's specific for iOS. And the cool part and sort of bonus of this feature, the shining example of why this is so cool, is that I'm just going to take my iOS device that's here, and I'm going to plug it into my Windows machine. Over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that here. And that should pop up here. Cool. And I never know how to turn off iTunes. Like I think it's impossible not to have iTunes start up when you plug it into your machine. But I'm going to set this instead of iPhone Simulator to device here. And what we're going to see is that it's going to give me a few new options here. Remote device. So if I was connected to a Mac, or this was some other Mac somewhere else, or Wi-Fi connected, it would show that on there. But I also have this iPhone. That is the name of my iPhone. I'm very original with my name of my iPhone. It's called iPhone. And I'm just going to hit debug. Again, I plug it right into my Windows machine, and now I'm in this local iOS device deployment with hot restart. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit next here. Now I have logged in with my developer account because I'm deploying to an iOS device. So I'm a bunch of teams, and I'm going to select my company here that I have refactored. And it's going to register this application with the Apple Developer Portal. It's going to make sure that I have all the things necessary to do a hot restart deployment, and hit finish here. And now while we're waiting, I'm going to go ahead and bring up a screen mirroring application, because that's going to be a lot better than me holding my phone up to the camera. So let's go ahead and have this pop up. I'm going to use Reflector here, which is a screen mirroring application. And what we should see here is my iPhone. So this is my real iPhone that's over here. There it is, which is nice. Now, what's going to happen is I have this set to always on top. So it'll just kind of always be on top here as we're popping around. This is sort of doing a full debug compilation, packaging up some special package for me. It deployed app 18 here for me, which is pretty astonishing. And I just went into debug mode, and I can launch it, which is pretty amazing. And now I have my actual iOS device over here. Notice again, hot reload has booted up. I have my full, live visual tree. I have my XAML binding errors, everything over here. And now I can just come in and I can change this back to orange. I go back and forth, pink, orange, same thing. I get the same reloading technology over here. So I could say, welcome to hot restart. Right? And it just updates as I'm typing, as I'm going, and I'm good to go. Now, again, the cool part here is that if I come over and I decide that I want to make some code changes, so let's go ahead and pull this around, and let's say I have a hello to, and I'll say hello from code over here. I get that same experience that we saw over on UWP when I was in the code behind adding the hello one originally. It says, hey, this is a running app, so none of the changes are going to take place until you restart it. But let's go ahead and update this data binding here, and I'll say binding. I'll say hello to. And instead of stopping and redeploying, I'm just going to hit the restart button. What this is going to do is it's going to act very, very similar to previous restarts. So it is going to do a diff, a diff on my application, and immediately reboot my application. See how quick that was? It didn't have to redeploy a whole new app or repackage an app. It only did the code diff there. And now we see hello 2. And now I can say hello 1, hello 2. And I get that data binding in that rich IntelliSense. Jim says on iOS, hot restart for iOS, how are splash screens and device icons handled? Yeah, so if you have your icons and everything in there, it'll package them all up for you automatically, which is great. It is only for development. So here we can very clearly see that this is an application for debug purposes that is here on my device. I can't deploy this. It's not a package I have access to. I can't deploy it to my app store. But for development purposes, I'm already able to use hot reload, hot restart, all the features that I know and love directly from file new, everything that I need here, which is really great. Now, when I'm ready to go in, if I need to edit a storyboard or I need to edit different files that need Mac compilation, or I'm compiling a native library, then you would still need a Mac for that. And of course, you'll need a Mac for final compilation, signing, and deployment to the App Store, which you could do locally, or you could do in App Center, Azure DevOps, or any other CI system. But that's a beautiful sort of way of showing what I like to call, like I said, the new Xamarin development. Coming in, file new, being super productive, having this rich IDE that's giving me all those tools that I know and love not only toolboxes, property panes, document outlines, live visual trees, hot reloading, restarting, redoing my Android applications immediately. So no matter what platform I'm working on, I'm super duper productive. And that's the type of experience that we want to deliver to developers. And it's available today. So everything I just showed you is available today. The XAML binding errors and the UWP hot reload for Xamarin Forms, that's in the preview branch, but everything else is available in stable. Hot reload is technically under a feature flag. So one thing that's cool here in tools options, you can note that there's these things called preview features, and there's all sorts of them in here. Actually, there's like just a ton of them, which is cool. There's a bunch of Xamarin ones that I'm too scared to turn on right now. But this is the hot restart here, which is really cool. And additionally, down under Xamarin, and let's see, where is it? Is it Xamarin Forms? Oh, there you go. Hot reload. Oh, that's a different one. Where did hot reload move? Hot. Zoomed in too much. There we go. Let's get out of here. Tools, options. Let's say hot reload. Now everything is under this one menu. So if you want to enable it right here, we can see that XAML hot reload uses the same engine for WPF, UWP, and Xamarin Forms for iOS and Android, which is cool. And then this is the new feature right here, which is enable just my XAML in the live visual tree, and also changes only, which is right here. This is that new one, changes only. So that's the new recommended, and those will be on by default, which is really cool. So you can see kind of the combination of how everything's sort of coming together, which is quite beautiful there. All right, let's carry on. Let's carry on. Perfect. So a few things that I just showed you, right? New file, new experience. We also have a new experience to help developers create their correct Android emulator or connect to a device, which I didn't show you, but it's totally there. It's awesome. Hot reload for UWP, XAML binding exceptions, a live visual tree, Android resource, quick deploy, iOS hot reload, and of course all those tools working together. Now hot restart, that feature that's oh so important that enables us to redeploy directly onto the device, comes with serious advantages. So you may have noticed, if you're paying close attention, that that first deploy took a little bit longer, but that incremental change was a lot faster. So here we can see with hot restart, you get to see before and after. So without hot restart, this was on one of our mega applications that we use, the Smart Hotel application, nearly 3 minutes to deploy. For the initial build was 3 minutes compared to 22 seconds. The initial deploy was actually a little bit longer because we have to do some additional deployment there. But then the biggest thing is what you're doing is you only have to do initial deploy once. You're doing incremental build and incremental deploy over and over again. And this is cutting it by 1,000% and 50% for not only the incremental build and also the incremental deploy, which is quite astonishing. And we released this feature actually in preview last year, a very internal preview, an MVP preview, and we're getting ready to release it out and finally, not under checkbox, into final release. That would be the default experience. And so far, developers have been using it and absolutely loving it, which is oh so exciting. And Maddie here is the PM of this project, but also all the XAML tooling and IDE integrations across the board. Maddie's amazing. One of my favorite PMs. All my PMs are my favorite, but we're here. Now let's get on to some of the stuff that we're doing in the cross-platform UI space. I talked a lot about just the tooling, the experience. As a developer, I want to be productive. But being productive also means that I have a very rich toolkit at my disposal to create beautiful applications across iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac. And that's where Xamarin Forms comes in as our cross-platform UI library that builds on top of Xamarin. And we've got some major milestones. I like to think Xamarin Form was Shell, which was one of the very first ones. It simplified tabs and flyout navigation, has a URI navigation screen, has a performant renderer technology. I use it in all my applications now. I love it. It enables you to be very productive, changing around bits and pieces and parts of your application. Visual and material design also brought in some new rendering technology that enabled you to bring material design or any other visual design system to iOS and other devices. And we shipped in the box visual design, material design with visual for iOS and Android. So you get this consistent design across the different platforms, which is something developers have been asking for. And then finally, collection view. It's weird that I call this a major milestone, but it kind of is, because the collection view is obviously an evolution of a list view, but at the same time, it's the building blocks and foundation for a lot of new controls that are taking place inside of Xamarin Forms. So it, of course, enables you to do horizontal, vertical scrolling, rows, columns, grouping, headers, footers, pull to refresh, all this great stuff. But as we'll see, there's a lot more built in. So I talked a little bit about Shell, but again, you can build basically almost anything with Shell. So having a tab bar on the top, on the bottom, nested tab bars are super duper simple. It takes care of navigation and your content without having to create new files. And here's a really cool example of building like in Microsoft News application with it, which is really awesome to see. Collection view, that foundational pivot point of being able to create really complex lists and grids of data. These are all samples by individuals in the community that built these amazing applications with these different pieces of UI technology. But it's really awesome to see sort of these being built out and grouping here. And whether you're using it in like a simple list view or simple nesting, there's amazing things that you can do with it. Carousel view, this is actually built on top of collection view, but enables you to do that left and right sliding. And you can see how from that collection view of burgers, when you tap on one, you can actually go left and right and swipe through them on this beautiful carousel. And it's really customizable, whether you want to animate or don't animate, and you can zoom in and zoom out and add snapping, different margins to it as well. On top of that, a nice combination is the swipe view, which again builds on top of the different learnings from collection view and other controls, but plays very nice with them, enabling you to add a swipe movement to any single view. It doesn't have to be in a collection view or a list view. List view hasn't built in, but now you can actually swipe anything. You can swipe a button. You can do from the top, from the bottom, to the left, to the right. There's built-in defaults, or you can customize them and do anything that you want, which is really awesome. And yeah, you can use it to create a Tinder clone if you want. You can do anything you want with the swipe view. Expander is something that developers have also been asking for. It's an expander. It expands stuff, which is cool. We can see here that the expander not only just expands your content, but there's easing properties that you can set here to do these nice fancy animations, such as this awesome shopping list. Javier built this shopping list sample, which is really cool. And just like the swipe view that could be added to anything, the expander can wrap any content too. So really being able to build these beautiful UIs, exactly what you need. And those can be nested inside of list views or anything like that. You can really take advantage of these really nice things that are built into these new UI controls. Another thing that's not really UI specific as far as a piece of the UI that you'd be building, but maybe this is how you want to construct your UI. I was just on a call with someone today that builds all of their user interfaces in C# directly. And I definitely have a few of my views that are in C#, and we have these new C# UI extensions that were 100% added by Vincent from the community, who had an amazing library, and he bundled it into Xamarin Forms, and you can get access to this. So what this does is it adds a bunch of extensions. So if we see here, this button has a style, fill, expand, margin, bind. These used to be very verbose, adding binding properties. Now you can just say bind to the specific command, and it knows what to do, which is really nice. So it makes it super easy, such as these row definitions that you can define instead of having to create a new row definition collection and add them and always forget what it is. You can just simply add it here really easily. So if you're building UIs in C#, you're going to really, really, really enjoy this. Now back to things that you can do in the UI. One of the most impressive features, the most powerful features that has been released this year, I think, is shapes. and geometry. What's really amazing about this is that there are about 10 different types of paths and clips and geometry that you can, and paths and lines that you can use to draw. So think of it as now your app has a canvas built in. Any layout is a canvas that you can draw on. You can do complex user interfaces when render SVGs. Here, David is actually rendering a path with path data from an SVG file, and he's rendering this entire sort of drop down here, this white entire background. It's not an image, it's actually just a path that's being drawn and filling it with white. And you can do really complex things on here. You no longer need third-party controls to add clipping to any control. You can just come in and simply add a clip to an image, add a geometry. So you no longer need a circle image or some third-party library. You can just do it right from the built-in new drawing API. And the things that developers are doing with this drawing API is spectacular. It's really amazing to see. And if you've ever used like WPF drawing, it's the same exact API. So it mirrors it nearly one-to-one. Of course, devices have light modes, dark modes, and now it's built directly into Xamarin Forms. It does the right thing when you need it to do the right thing, but you can customize the theme how you want it. You no longer need different resources and complex merging of resource dictionaries. You can simply come in and set any value here with a new binding called app theme binding. And you can set the dark and light mode, and then you can turn that on and off, and it'll do the right thing based on those properties. So as you're looking to put different controls into your application, you can hard code colors, of course, but if you want to really adhere to that light theme and dark theme, which is pretty important to do, you can apply this to any property. Oh, my phone is ringing. There we go. All right, it's Best Buy. Cool. And finally, one of the coolest things beyond paths and beyond app themes is gradients. This is one of the most latest features added to Xamarin Forms, which enables you to do gradient stops, gradient brushes to any single control. So whether you want to add them to a frame, to a linear layout, to a button, as you can see on this page, there's gradients happening absolutely everywhere, which is delightful. And you can have gradient stops and just really make your designer super happy and put gradients all over your applications, which is really cool. Oh, one more thing, why not? Because we have dual screen devices now. One of the cool features that was added recently is drag and drop. There's so many features being added, and these are only in the last few months, I always forget. But this is really cool. There's now drag regions and drop regions. So you can add a drag region to any control and a drop region to any other area. And based on sort of the content, whether it's text or whether it's images like you see here, it will do the smart thing and copy the data over for you. This also works if it's another application. In fact, what you're seeing here is a different application on the left than the right. This is two different applications running at the same time, displaying different content. And yet, that data from the clipboard is coming over automatically. And you can create that for anything. You can drag and drop and move things around. And you can link and loop into the events, so the drop events there too, which is really cool. Nice. All right. That's stuff that you can get today. Like those are all things that are available. There's so much. It's absolutely ridiculous. So if you haven't updated to the latest version of Xamarin Forms or Visual Studio, there's so much productivity and so many amazing controls built in, but there's so much more that's coming too. I want to focus in on three things before I talk about further future stuff. I want to focus in first just on Xamarin Forms, first and foremost, which we've been talking about a lot. Talk about the roadmap here for the near term and going forward. Also, I want to talk about the Xamarin Community Toolkit, which is an amazing initiative that pairs really well with Xamarin Forms. And then also Xamarin Essentials, which I think is oh so cool because it's my baby. It's one thing that I absolutely love. And I love writing code. I just wrote all the new documentation just in the last 2 days as well. And the engineering team that's pumping out releases is amazing. So Xamarin Forms. I showed you all of those things. Those are all things that are in releases that were released in 4.6, 4.7, 4.8. 4.8 stable just landed a week or two ago. And in fact, today, Xamarin Forms 5.0 was just released into preview. The full release of that puppy will be out in October, late October, early November, which will pair well around when .NET 5 launches at .NET Conf in November. Now, since Xamarin Forms has major or minor releases every 6 weeks, you'll get, service releases as needed. You'll continue to get new versions of those. Now, one thing that I think is really important about 5.0 and why I want to hype it up is because a lot of those features that I just showed you are under feature flags. So app theme, carousel view, expander, gradient branch. I didn't even talk about media element yet, shapes and paths and swipe view. All of those are under feature flags. And there's a few more too. Now, one of two things is going to happen here. With Xamarin Forms 5.0, the plan is all about finalizing all of these amazing controls. So they will no longer be under feature flag and they will be in stable. That is the mission of Xamarin Forms 5.0. All of the hard work, all of the trial that has come up, some of those controls like collection view were in preview for a long time, came to stable. Now the team is working on getting all of these controls up to stable. Now, with Xamarin Forms 5.0, some of these brand new features will actually be removed. They're going to be removed because they need a little bit more time to cook than what's ready in 5.0, and there's some important new things that the team is working on. But that doesn't mean that they're being removed completely. The plan here with Xamarin Forms 5.0 is to take all of the existing things that have been in progress and make them stable, pump them out, and focus on stability and focus on performance for all of those controls. Any of the things that will be removed, I think expander, C# extensions, and media element are going to be removed, and they're going to be moved into the Xamarin Community Toolkit. And the Xamarin Community Toolkit is an amazing collection of controls and extensions and converters and all sorts of amazing things that's run by the amazing developer community in and around Xamarin and Xamarin Forms. And in fact, the 1.0 pre-release is out and has some amazing things built right into it. So I like to say that the Xamarin Community Toolkit is run by the community, but Microsoft backed. You have Microsoft employees that are contributing code. The documentation will be on the official website. It's in the official Xamarin GitHub, and there's a bunch of cool features. I was playing around with it because I'm pretty hyped up on it. And I created this little video to show some of the features that I'll talk through. So this is the sample app. There's some cool behaviors like built-in animations that you can bind to automatically, which is really nice. Automatically built into the application. There's things such as different mask behaviors that you can add to them. So there's sort of these nice helper methods. There's extensions and converters, but also new views, like a brand new avatar view, range slider that adds different left and right customizations onto the existing range. You can adjust the thumb size. A side menu, so you can slide things in and out easily, which I think is fantastic. Camera view, which is in preview, which is the old, which is different. It's going to put a camera directly into the application. Expander. So this is coming over from Xamarin Forms into the Community Toolkit, but you can kind of see the nested expansion that's coming down here into it, which I showed you earlier. And they're adding more. So this is just the start of some of the stuff that's coming in the Community Toolkit, and anyone can contribute. So if you have some awesome tools and libraries and things, you can go ahead and contribute here or grab the release and actually use it today. It's a NuGet available. So that's the UI part of it that we have. But let's talk about the APIs. We just released support for iOS 14 this week, which is spectacular. Of course, we have Android 11 support too. But when you want to access those new features, that's where Xamarin Essentials comes in. It gives you a single, consistent API to access native features. We launched Xamarin Essentials over a year ago, build 2019. We've been extending it and adding more features that are being contributed from the development team, the PM team, and the community, which is very exciting. In fact, the most recent release, I believe like 8 out of the 10 features were community delivered, which is cool. So this is going to give you access to all the other things like clipboard and secure settings, phone dialer, share, vibration, all that stuff. And it's supported on iOS, Android, and of course, Windows. Last year, we actually extended Xamarin Essentials to support watchOS, tvOS, and we worked directly with the Samsung team to support Tizen. And as of today, in the most recent release that just released a week ago, we extended Xamarin Essentials with Mac OS support built directly into the box. And this is amazing. No matter how you're building your applications, whether it's standalone or cross-platform, you can use Xamarin Essentials to have that consistent API. Now, what I love is that Xamarin Essentials 1.6, which is in pre-release right now, just released hot bits, just 8 days ago, added that Mac OS support, added app actions, contacts, haptic feedback, a file picker, a media picker, and a screenshot. And I got so excited about it. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that I tweeted this awesome video, and I got really excited about the transitions. I made this video for this user group. Like, it didn't exist because I wasn't giving this talk, and I wanted to put it in here. So I'm gonna play this back. So app actions are awesome because app actions enable you on iOS, Android, and Windows to have those deep links. File picker, as you would expect, is a file picker. You can have it pick a specific file, like a PDF file, pick an image, so it actually grays out the PDF, so we can see the image here. And you can even do multiple files directly into the picker here, which is cool. Media picker, very similar. Pick photo, pick video are going to be the same, where it just kind of picks that. But you can also now capture a photo or a video directly from your iOS, Android, and Windows device. Screenshot, this is super helpful if you have some email support. You can just take a screenshot of your device. Done. It's amazing. Contacts, you can come in and you can pick, look at that animation, pick a contact. So here's me, and you can see it pulls in my phone number, my email address, and my name that I can get, which is really cool. I'd show haptic feedback, but you can't really show that in a video. And that's all available today, which is really cool. And we'll be rolling out documentation. I just finished it, so hopefully today or tomorrow, which is cool. Now, that is all the stuff that I think going into the end of the year is really exciting. You have all these new features coming in to our UI stack with Xamarin Forms. You have all the productivity features of Visual Studio that I just showed you, and you have all these amazing cross-platform APIs in addition to the native APIs all in C# for iOS and Android. Our mission really has been to enable developers to build fast, beautiful, and native apps with less code in this thriving ecosystem. And with .NET, there's been a lot of versions and frameworks and runtimes. And the .NET team, which is what the Xamarin team is part of, has a mission, a journey to a singular .NET, one .NET, if you will. I'm going to make the idea is it's simple. Things just run on .NET. How do you share code? You share them with the .NET library, right? How do you build your apps? Well, you use the .NET CLI, or you use Visual Studio, which uses the same CLI. How do you create a project? Well, you can create a project for anything with the command line or directly in Visual Studio. The same templates, the same tool chain, the same project systems, all of them are the same. That is the goal. And we want to do that across our entire stack of what we support. Because obviously we support not only mobile and desktop like I've showed you, but web, cloud native, gaming, IoT, and AI. So we've always had this unified platform, but we really want to simplify them down into a singular stack. So instead of having .NET Core, .NET Framework, Mono, and Xamarin runtimes, everything in a singular .NET vision is just .NET. One SDK, one BCL, one build toolchain. That's it. Cross-platform native UI, cross-platform web UI, cloud native investments, and continuous improvements in speed, size, diagnostics, and of course, tooling. We want .NET to be the thing that enables you to build for anything. And of course, that's going to be powered by your favorite languages that all run with .NET. So whether that's C#, F#, or VB. And yes, I don't know if Elder Scrolls 6 is confirmed, but maybe, I don't know what they're using. I don't know, but let's just say that a majority of games have some .NET in or around them, which is magical, whether it's Unity or something else. So what does this look like for these different investments? Let's talk about cross-platform web UI. Blazor is an amazing piece of technology that has been enabling web developers to build applications that run connected or completely disconnected in the browser. It can also be combined with other technologies too, to have like a desktop experience. when it comes to cross-platform native UI, that is what you would think. It would just be Xamarin, right? Xamarin is what enabling the native UIs across desktop and mobile and other devices. And whether you're developing for native or web, you'll simply get this singular SDK. And Hussein asked, great question about the SDK. Well, the SDK is not going to be one mega SDK. How this will work is that you can sort of selectively pick and choose the optional installations that will happen, from my understanding at least. So you should be able to do that there. So kind of similar like how when you install Visual Studio, you pick the additional options, basically. So let's dial in on that cross-platform native UI, right? I've shown you all of this today. What are we going to do? How are we taking it forward when we think about re-envisioning .NET into a singular .NET with .NET 5 and .NET 6? Well, for .NET 5, we're delivering Xamarin Forms 5.0. It's all going to work exactly the same. We don't have any plans to really change any of that bit for .NET 5 this year. We planned on it originally. However, let's see, there's been a global pandemic. There's been wildfires everywhere. There's been terrible, not tsunamis, but all the things that you're experiencing down there. What is that thing called? What's the thing? Tropical storms. I have so much family in Florida. I think I should remember this because they all head inside at least once or 5 times a year. All of these things, and that obviously impacts not only development schedules, but we want to make sure that what we deliver is super ideal and super amazing. So what we've been floating around is, what are we doing for .NET 6? And it's something that we call .NET MAUI. .NET MAUI is the multi-platform app UI. It's an evolution of Xamarin Forms that sits on top of .NET, specifically .NET 6. So it gives you everything you love about cross-platform native UI, but it combines some cool pieces of technology, such as a single project. You're able to deploy seamlessly to multiple devices. It's an evolution of Xamarin Forms, like I mentioned, and it will run on .NET 6. It's actually open source already today. We announced this at Build earlier this year. The key part is that we're also, and hurricane, thank you, Brandon. That is the key word that I'm looking for, tropical storms and hurricanes. I believe that there's a trajectory of as things get terribly worse, yes. And what we're targeting here is not only deep investments in mobile, but also in desktop on macOS and Windows. So you get those world-class experiences that are feature-rich across all 4 platforms. So one of the things that we're experimenting with and prototyping with is, what would .NET MAUI look like if we were to enhance the development experience even further? So how would it work in that command line sort of environment, if you will? So I created a video ahead of time, and this is me running over on my Mac. So I just have terminal up here, and I'm going to say .NET New MAUI. Just like I would say .NET New WPF or .NET New whatever, I just say .NET New MAUI. And that's going to create my application. I'm going to restore my NuGet packages. In the future here, this would just be .NET Restore. Here, and I could say .NET Run, but I'm actually going to boot up VS Code over here. And one of the experiments that we're really playing around with is, what would it look like to have sort of everything at your fingertips in a single project, in a single C# language, instead of using XAML and data binding? What would it look like with something like MVU? So here I have this body, which has a VStack, a spacer, a label, and a button on it. And everything data bound is data bound inside of the C# file. MVU frameworks like Fabulous or Flutter, this is going to look pretty familiar, where there's a stateful part of it that's here, so you don't need to worry about the data binding. But I'm in VS Code, so I'm just going to go into the debug. I'm going to go ahead and hit debug here, select my iOS device, and VS Code is going to run that singular tool chain and then launch this application on my iOS simulator. So it's going to go through a normal sort of build chain here that I would expect. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up the simulator here. And there's our new app, and it's going to install and launch. So what's neat about this is that I have my app. It's all written in code. It's really elegant. It's very nice. I have my body here that's being updated. And let's say I want to update something. So the first thing I'm going to do is just come in, and I'm going to adjust this text alignment, I think. because the count here, which we see is being incremented when I click the button, is not centered. So I'm going to come in and I'm just going to remove that, the left, and I get rich IntelliSense here instead of VS Code. And then, similar to what I showed you earlier, it's like XAML hot reload, I get C# hot reloading right here in this MVU style. And it's stateful, so that state is retained as well, and it's incremented. I can change other things, such as colors here, so now it changes to pink. I can change it back to black because it's a little bit harder to see. But I can do other things too, besides changing the UI. I can change the app logic. So for example, here, when I increment the value of this integer, I can actually decrement it. So here I can just now decrement it, and that's going to reload. And of course, I can change that button on the label to say minus, and that state is retained through not only the UI changes, but also through changes to the app logic. And what's neat about that is that this is a kind of a amazing getting started experience, but also a productive experience when you're further on, if you enjoy this type of development style. MVU is still kind of new to me on it, and I could definitely see it being advantageous in certain types of my pages that I may want to create in my application. Especially for students and any developer getting started and introducing to their first language and first framework, this is going to be a great experience out of the box. But we're actually also looking at the full IDE experience. So here in Visual Studio, just like I created a Xamarin project before, I'm going to create a .NET MAUI application, and I'm just going to use traditional XAML over here. And it's going to look very, very similar. So it's just sort of the same template, but what would it look like in XAML, right? So I have my stack layout, I have my labels, I have my buttons, my normal controls that I know and love from Xamarin Forms. So the cool part here is that this should all feel very, very familiar. My data bindings, my click handlers, all the properties that I know and love, because those two systems can work in tangent with each other. And just like I showed you earlier, where I could deploy locally to my device or to my local Windows machine, I can, of course, deploy this directly onto my Windows machine. I get a beautiful welcome to Maui. I get my value count. I get my diagnostics. I get all the things that I know and love. And when I tap on it, it increments over here. And I, of course, can move it around because it's a desktop application over here. Now, of course, I can be productive right out of the box and just simply deploy to Windows. But with .NET MAUI, all of those amazing features that I was talking about earlier are also going to come, of course, with .NET MAUI. So it's sort of like when I talk about the new Xamarin experience, that is sort of the new default going forward. So here I'm going to go ahead and do a drop down. I have another device, I call it Scott's phone. So whenever I'm doing demos with Scott Hanselman or Scott Hunter, I put all of the apps on that phone specifically. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit deploy here. This is really early bits, so normally I would hit debug, but I'm working around some of the kinks in the system here. And I'm just going to hit deploy, and we'll see that it's deployed to my device, which is awesome. So again, I get that same type of experience where I can increment. I could then make XAML changes. I could do whatever I want and be super duper productive there. Now, the same thing is true, of course, if I wanted to deploy to Android or anything like that. What you saw is that I just went to the single dropdown, and the project knew that I was on iOS, Android, and Windows. And that is because I have a single project over here. And this is one of the new experiences that we're experimenting with for .NET MAUI as a fundamental change to the system. So the cool part here is that with a single project, it means I can put all of my cross-platform stuff there. Not only my code, but also my fonts and my images and my resources like strings. And when I compile my application for the specific operating system, it will do the right thing for me. It'll automatically figure out how to embed the fonts for iOS, Android, and Windows, and all of the images that will be resized for me automatically from this, which is really cool. So built into the box. These are sort of things that you have to wire up today or install dependencies on, and they're just built in. Now, since it is a specific project, and just one of them, I need to write platform code on occasion. So that's why we have this platform dropdown that enables me to add platform-specific code for iOS, Android, Windows, or Mac, of course. If I had a Mac application, I can add those platforms in. So if I needed to access Bluetooth or something like that, I could access that platform-specific code directly inside of that project there. Now, when things are compiled up and deployed, all of the normal Android manifests and the info plist, all those things are there. They're just sort of hidden automatically by default, but you can still get access to them. So here's the cool parts about it. Sort of cross-platform, re-envisioned, simplified. So single project, and we leverage the multi-targeting built into .NET 5 and .NET 6. So we can simply multi-target by adding these iOS and Android names, like kind of target frameworks on top of it. Then I have my new packages that would be brought in. I can deploy to multiple devices or emulators like I showed you. I have all of my fonts and resources in a single place. And of course, all of my cross-platform code in a single place as well. So this is sort of the re-envisioning of what a cross-platform project or library would look like. Now with this, the whole idea is that System MAUI and system devices are built into the box, into the package when you get it with .NET 6. These are evolutions of Xamarin Forms and Xamarin Essentials. And you would say File New, Multi-Platform App UI, or .NET New MAUI. And for traditional iOS and Android user interfaces or projects without cross-platform UI with .NET MAUI UI or Xamarin Forms UI, you're going to see a change here because these will be using the new SDK style projects for iOS and Android, and they'll no longer be a Xamarin iOS or Xamarin Android project. They'll be .NET for iOS or .NET for Android, or it might be iOS for .NET or Android for .NET. I'm not really 100% positive like that, or maybe just iOS.NET and Android.NET. I'm not positive yet. But the cool part there is there's no breaking changes, no API changes, but the CS proj will be upgraded to the brand new SDK style, which is very, very cool. .NET MAUI is open source, so you can take a look at it and see its evolution as things change as we listen to feedback. Again, these are sort of in drafts here, which is really cool. I like iOS. I do like iOS and iOS.NET and Android.NET. I was talking about this earlier, which is ASP.NET is the .NETification of ASP, right? And VB.NET is the .NETification of VB technically. So there's that lineage there. I'm going to submit that immediately because I just came up with that now. So I'm going to put that there. And ML.NET, right? The .NETification of ML. That's right. I do like that. That's perfect. So there's a bunch of different things in here. The interesting part about .NET MAUI is that there's a lot more under the hood that is planned as far as re-architecting the rendering process, making things super performant by default, enabling developers to extend them. It's loosely coupled, so that way we're able to run the data binding layer or the MVU layer side by side, and there's no core dependencies, which is very nice, which means that you can blend this with existing MVVM, reactive UI, MVU, or even Blazor, which is really cool. You can combine these technologies together across the board. For UWP, it'll be upgraded to WinUI 3 from Microsoft. And of course, it'll bring macOS into the mix officially. Instead of being a community preview feature, it'll be standardized there. It'll have multi-targeting, multi-window support, and of course, it'll ship with .NET 6 and run on SDK-style projects. And what this looks like, I love the new .NET schedule. So the .NET schedule looks a little bit like this. Which is every year there's a new release of .NET. So you can imagine there's a new release of iOS.NET and Android.NET and .NET MAUI, right? And in November, we'll ship .NET 5. And in November next year, we'll ship .NET 6. Now, there's important pieces there, which underneath it is LTS, long-term support. And those LTS releases was .NET Core 3.1, and every 2 years, we ship a new one. And there's a whole thing about the support policy, but you can kind of read it through. It follows normal support policy of LTS, but it makes it very easy. When you go to the .NET website, you'll see .NET, and you'll see current and LTS. And current would be .NET 5 on November, and LTS would be .NET Core 3. And then next year, you would see current, which would actually be .NET 7 because you would ship a preview of it, right? And then the LTS would be .NET 6, which is cool. So the plan obviously is releasing .NET 5 in November, and then .NET 6 would be .NET MAUI and iOS for Android with .NET SDK support built in. If you ask me what you should do today, don't you worry. The entire thing says obviously very far off, and previews are still not out yet. And if you're doing something today, we'd be very clear. You should just create a Xamarin app, use Xamarin Forms, or use it there. You'll be able to migrate easily to the next generation across the board. There's no need to wait. You can take advantage of all of that amazing stuff that I talked to you and told you about for the first 50 minutes of this entire presentation, because you can build beautiful native applications across all these different platforms. I ship applications for iOS, Android. I ship a Mac application, a Windows desktop application, and you can do it all with C#, XAML, .NET using Xamarin. And that's it. You can just go to Xamarin.com. There's a button there. You can, of course, listen to my podcast. You can email me at any time, and everything there. That's correct. We use 52-week sprints. That's correct. No, I think you get a new version. It's normal, like 3-week cycles as well. So, in fact, if you go to the .NET website here. So let's say you go to .NET over here, and you click on download. You'll see core and frameworks, and next time you'll just see those two. But if you go into all versions, you sort of see all the different versions. But if you tap on .NET Core 3.1, you'll see all the different versions of 3.1, right? So this was released on 8.1, 9.8. So it's almost like once a month, basically, new things, based if it's a security patch or it's something else, right? That's there. Yeah, .NET. Hanselman's been saying that it's .NET, so it's probably easier to do. Yeah, but there's that. So yeah, that's it. And that's it. I did it. And I'm done. I'll ask your questions, I guess. Let's see. Stephen asks, how does the Xamarin future fit in with the Uno platform? Well, the Uno platform, they have their own roadmap and, what they're working on. Their goal is to bring WinUI with that exact dialect to different platforms. It's obviously built on top of Xamarin, so they're super speedy and nifty over at Inventive and what they're doing over there. And it's open source, so they can, and we're open source, so whatever we're up to, they can follow along. And we're in contact with them as well. And that's a cool part. So if you're using other UI stacks on top of Xamarin, of course, it just is still a Xamarin or .NET app at the end of the day. So yeah, whatever they're up to, they would be along for the previews as well. And then if they do something special, as far as like for some reason their UI is obviously different than our hot reload, so they would build something specific like they've done already. But that's their own company, as well.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Thank you very much, James, for all this. A lot of good information in here. I thank you for being here, of course. So a couple of questions I have are really towards the Mac side and towards the native side of things. So you mentioned that the VS for Mac will not be far behind for VS for Windows when it comes to things like binding headers and inspector. Is that the case, or you think that'll be a little while before that comes to VS for Mac?
Yeah, it really depends on where these different tools and technologies come from. So the XAML binding piece of technology that was actually created, I believe it was open source project that we worked directly with the engineer in the open source on, and extended it with different UWP and Xamarin Forms support, and now bundling it into the product. It's a cool thing to see like this community project actually get bundled in. I'm pretty sure that's how it went. And of course that started over on Windows, that was there. So as sort of development occurs, we look at it as how does this look cross-platform, right? How do we break it into different pieces? With Visual Studio for Mac, you now run the same Roslyn analysis engine. Some of the new extension stuff is sort of decoupled down. So it makes it easier to bring over extensions. So the plan always is, of course, to attempt to ship things as close as possible. But sometimes it's just not realistic with just how things are architected, or that to be re-architected across the board. But that's things that the teams are working on. So the plan is always to try to get close, but it's not like a guarantee of SimShip. And of course, Windows or Mac sometimes gets stuff first, like the iOS 14 support that is tied to Xcode and things like that. So it's also something that sometimes they get features that are unique to Mac ahead of time. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And one last question I had was on when we looked at the Maui's file structure or project structure, it looks pretty cool where we just have an iOS and Android folders, but you mentioned that the actual implementation is still available, but it's hidden, right? So if I want to go something really crazy, I do want to get access to my main activity and my view control app delegate and all that stuff, that's just available. It's just not part of the project.
Yeah, so no, it's there. It's just I like to call it swizzled, but when you create like a Swagger definition, you say auto generate this stuff, it's hidden in your OBJ file. That's what's done. Sort of the build system will do a bunch of stuff, and we'll have properties and ways of sort of overriding that default behavior. That's the plan. We're still kind of figuring out some of those details, but the idea is if I needed to get in and adjust the info plist, it would be there for me. With a property, or I could say use this info plist or generate one for me type of thing. But the idea is, if you imagine every app needs a splash screen. And what's on a splash screen? An image and a color. So, well, don't create all of them. An experiment that we're running internally is, what if you just gave us the image and the color and we just generated all the splash screens for you, right? There's things like that that'll be sort of hopefully built into this process that will simplify that stuff. But that's why we're going to do previews and see, like, hey, we thought of this magical, amazing thing, but is it what you need or not, right? And we can always pull it out too. Yeah. The idea is hopefully you never have to go into an Android manifest. I try not to, basically. I try to use properties and everything like that. I just think they version a little bit better, but yeah.
Cool.
Oh, I had a question from James in here too, I'll say. So in September 2021, great question, LTS is still 3.1, is current 5 or 6 preview? That's correct. So LTS is 3.1 because that's the long-term support, and then current would be 5.0. Pretty sure. Let me see. How does Node? I would just say, like, what does Node.js do? So yeah, current. It's a good question. I don't know what it's going to look like because it's not there yet. That's a good question. So obviously 13 wasn't here, but latest features, current. I don't know. I got to ask the team. A good question. I'm pretty sure it should show. What will it show? I think it will show LTS, which is 3.1, because that makes sense. And then it should show 5.0 is current. And then there should be a other downloads or whatever, which would show you the preview, but I'm not positive. It's a good question. Yeah, how do they do it? Where's their preview? Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. But however they do it, that's how we're going to do it. So, yeah. Where are my coworkers now? They're at home. So Ralph was asking, where am I speaking from? I'm speaking from my office. That's where I work every day. Out of the house. And then my wife has an office on the other side as well. This is my cool background that I crafted myself. I've mostly worked from home. I joined Xamarin 7 years ago, and I worked from home for Xamarin for 3.5 years. And even when I worked at Microsoft in the office, when we were able to go in, I mostly stayed at home like 2 or 3 days a week. Tandy asks, is it possible to deploy test app to iPhone without having an Apple developer account? No, you have to have one. It's just you have to have one. And you can use the free account if you're on a Mac or on Windows if you connect to a Mac, but to use Hot Restart, you have to have a paid account. So Jim asks, I was seeing on Ignite, Hanselman was showing off code spaces, which is very cool. Does the functionality work with Xamarin or .NET MAUI apps going forward? I don't know. There's definitely a lot of research and investigation with code spaces. It's still obviously in preview there. It's a good question. I've been talking internally to a lot of different people, but we'll sort of see how code spaces progresses as well there. There's obviously a lot of different dependencies beyond with mobile development and client development beyond just the .NET itself, right? Because you still need the Android and the iOS SDKs and a bunch of other things, but there's definitely some stuff that we're experimenting with. Brandon asks, what does the migration look like for Forms to Maui? How long is it there? Good question. So the plan is from Xamarin Forms to whatever we're looking for, or even to SDK style projects too, is there's a tool from the .NET team called TryConvert. So this tool was used heavily with WinForms and WPF from .NET Framework to .NET Core and upgrading projects and things like that. And the idea is to build that in, which should be a command line that does a bunch of stuff. By default, it's not going to magically upgrade all of your projects, ideally to a single project, a bunch of other stuff. It would just upgrade seamlessly to like SDK style and any things like that. And there might be some cleanup after that. So it's still an investigation going on, but the TryConvert is sort of the plan there, which has worked very well. I've done that on my WinForms apps and WPF apps in the past, but sort of the plan. Yeah. Let's see if there's anything else, Jason. When are you speaking next? I wish I had told my coworker. Great question. I highly recommend you join the .NET virtual user group. That's where all my stuff is at. I have a talk at a few user groups, a user group next month and in December, and they'll all be on there. And I believe I'm giving the same exact talk, but updated to whatever is next. I have this whole list of here. And you have a recording. Oh, there you go, Jason.
Yeah,
there you go.
so
Perfect.
I'll post that the next day or two.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and one thing too is if Jason is really nice, what he can do is when you go to the .NET Foundation and you go to this .NET Meetups and the virtual user group, what's cool is that any user group can submit their past events to be put into this playlist here. So these are ones that some were streamed to the .NET Foundation and some weren't. So if it was uploaded to YouTube, even if it's unlisted, it can be added into this playlist because we can add, and you can add anything into a playlist, which is cool. So we're trying to, just get a bunch of them in there, if anyone wants to. So it's kind of a nice thing. What are the 4 most popular mobile dev frameworks? All of them. I don't know. It depends. Off the top of my head, that four most popular. That's a lot. So obviously Xamarin with .NET, Flutter, React Native, and Ionic. Those would be the top 4. So 2 web, 1 custom drawn, and then 1 fully native, which would be us. So those would be like I mean, from my perspective, I don't have numbers though, to be honest with you. So, and then native Swift and Kotlin development would be like number 1, because no matter what, there's always like more native. There'll always be like more native Windows applications than maybe Electron apps in the world, right? I assume. But yeah, Ionic has a great team. They're doing some cool stuff over there. Yeah. But it just kind of depends on what you're, doing, of course. And of course, yeah, Swift also, and Kotlin has some cross-platform stuff, and Swift has some cross-platform stuff too. So it's kind of this world of a lot of cross-platform things. What tools, what languages do you like? And that's why in this talk specifically, I like to really talk about, Xamarin's been around for a decade, right? And .NET, a few decades, right? At this point, really tried true, tested, and we've built on the things that developers have been asking us for. So these hot reloading, deploying directly to iOS device, so this really complex technology and still evolving at the same time. So, yeah. I don't know if there's anything else. Xamarin best on iOS or Android? I don't know. I do both. So I think it's both best on both. So I think with some of the stuff I talked about, startup tracing and app bundles, those native integrations that we have, that really reduces like startup time and anything like that to really get it down to that native performance. So it's pretty much on par. Yep. Good questions.
All right. Well, we added questions, it looks like. Oh, nope.
Let's see, Tanya, we'll do one more. This will be the last one. If you wanted to persist data in your app, what would be the best approach? SQLite-net from Frank, probably. I don't know. It's probably still what I used. It depends what you're doing. If you need like a persistent database, and that's sort of great, of course. If you need just a caching library, like something very, very lightweight to cache some data, you can use my Monkey Cache library, which is super duper light. I just use a file store. So it's just temporary small bits of data. It's not a database, but it's a small way of just doing that. LightDB is also really cool. Give that a try. That works everywhere too. So yeah, LightDB, LightDB, also cool. Or SQLite-net. SQLite-net is an ORM on top of SQLite. Object Relational Mapper. Yeah, cool. We did it.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And like I said, I will do my best to get the video posted tomorrow or Friday and to whatever, all different channels, and notify everyone.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. And yeah, hopefully myself or some other people from the team can come and give more talks. So I'll make sure they're sent your way, Jason.
Tell everyone to respond to my emails. They ignored me last time. You threw them under the bus.
There you go. We are in the middle of Ignite, so that was I think one of the hard parts.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have anything to do for Ignite, so I was free. So, but
all right.
cool.
Thanks everyone.
All right.
Have a good night. See you next month.
Cheers. Bye.